So when me and Jill sold the house, we had to give away most of our belongings because we moved into an RV, and it's only 400 square feet. A lot of my personal effects and a lot of the things that were left of me, some of which are in this box right here, I couldn't wait to get into. So I went and got a ladder when we stayed one weekend, or this weekend. I went and got a ladder out of the garage and got up there and decided to pull this box down. What's in it is 30-something years of my father's diaries, as he was a Freemason that went to Africa to build bread-making plants. And there's a big deal about the part of Africa that he was in and the Freemasonry that he was involved in and making bread. I know that sounds sort of crazy, but you can sort of go through his diaries with me and you'll see that it was quite an odd year and how the twist of things in life just sort of didn't treat him right. When I get this box down, it's full of his diaries, memoirs, some maps and things like that he left me. A lot of silver certificates, some money, old money, and silver 50-cent pieces, silver dollars, silver certificates. He was big into all that stuff. But the box was about, 20 or 30 pounds, sort of heavy, literally got a cannonball inside of it. But I got it to the kitchen and got some lights set up and a couple of tripods and a couple of different camera angles so that you can see me go through this box and what all's included in it. You can see I got the overhead light. I got a couple of different camera angles. I got a train going by right now, so that ought to help things. Let's hear it. I love that. It would only happen whenever I'm trying to record something. And that was me just hitting my head on top of this little case. So there's been all kinds of obstacles that happened. My Chipotle got here, and I had to eat that before I went through this box. But you can see I finally get to the point to where we're going to open this thing up because I know what's in here. And the things that are right here on the top of it, a couple of them are, I had to remember how to open this thing. It's got two latches right on the front. It's old. It's made out of wood, and it's wrapped in cloth and painted with like glue. So it's like varnished cloth over wood. And he worked for Sunbeam Bread Company, and that was a gold matchbox. Those are some of the coins that he left me. And these are some things that he didn't leave me, but they're two gun and an old Civil War piece that I have, and that's from my other side of the family, my other father. TJ, this guy right here, he was my stepdad for like 30-something years, and he was in my life. He was just a sweetheart. He was a 32nd degree Mason. I checked with a couple of Masons around, and he was a 32nd degree Mason, and I don't know to what extent he went, but he was like 95 years old when he passed away, and he was way up in the Shriners and the potentate of the Shriners, and he documented everything in these diaries right here, every day of his life. And this particular year that I'm going to go through in these diaries, I believe it's 1980 something. He went to Africa. And it's just this amazing story about how he goes all the way across the world in a time when there were no jets and what have you to get him there. Goes all the way across the world only to find out that his wife has brain cancer. And as soon as he gets there, literally, and lands. So this is a little bit more of this box. It's the keys that go and lock it up. And then this is the top that sets and covers over the stuff that's in the bottom. And then the bottom of this thing is some more stuff that goes in that old antique gun. And then there's a map, and that's a map scroll, a leather map scroll. And that's really pretty cool. It kept a lot of the maps that he left me, and they were from the East Coast. It's also got a document in there from Benjamin Harrison, where he was issued 119 acres in Tallahassee. I'll go through that in another day. But I want to get to these diaries. There's a cannonball right there from the Civil War. That's some old money and old maps. It's really cool. That map is stamped in the bottom corner. It's from the Library of Congress. That picture's of my daughter. But he left me all these silver certificate money, and it's really, those are cool. That was, I did a couple of ticks on those where they're due the bearer payable in silver on demand, and I found out that they don't do that anymore. But as I go through these little memoirs, these are always real cool. I loved him to death. Again, I never saw him to meet any harm. TJ walked up on Omaha Beach on D-Day, and he was an exceptional person. He was a tiny guy. I'm a huge dude, and definitely TJ was, my father-in-law or stepfather or whatever it is when your mama marries somebody. But TJ always would never talk about these stories, but he didn't mind if I asked questions, he would answer me. And some of these maps and what have you are things that he's had on and along, and some of the stories that are written down are stories from people that he took while he was in the Army. And again, this is World War II. This is a guy that walked up on Omaha Beach. He was 21 years old, and he was older than most of the people in his platoon, so they all looked up to him. And I don't know if he was a Freemason at that point in his life. I think he had a lot to live for and a wife and all kinds of things. And then I think it all sort of went downhill, and he ended up just burying himself into Freemasonry. But let's dig into this first and oldest diary that I could find in his collection. And I'm going to flip right through this. Once I got all the stuff out of the box, I sort of put them into the years that they're categorized. It's about 30 years worth of stuff. And then I put 2 different camera angles so that you can sort of see that I was going through these things with the camera. And I've got one that'll zoom right down on top of the work. Again, in this first book, he opens up the beginning of the year in January, and this big trip, he goes all the way across the world to Mombasa, Africa, in Kenya. And he's going to open up a bread manufacturing plant. And he is involved in masonry at this point. I know not back in the war is what I was saying earlier, but he is involved in Freemasonry because as soon as he gets to Mombasa in Kenya, he goes to... there's some more of those silver certificates right there. He goes to the lodge and checks in with the lodge, Freemasonry lodge, as soon as he gets to Africa and Mombasa. But there's some the silver certificates that he had left me, and then some of his information on the very front. At the end of this video, I go back through this whole front end of the book because I sort of skip in it a little bit, and I go back over it again. It's very interesting. But I'm going to pick up the camera here in just 1 second and zoom right in and show you what I'm reading on that book. This is him planning this trip at the beginning of January. He is getting ready to take a flight and is prepping for the airplane to go to Mombasa in Africa. There you go. So now he's leaving for Mombasa on January the 14th. Making these preparations to go across the world. And he's going to open a plant and stay there for quite some time. He gets there on January or leaves for Mombasa on the 14th. Arrives on the 15th, and then he stays through town to meet these people, and there was nobody that met him. I think that he waited for a client and they didn't show up, and it goes through the next day or so. Again, I picked the camera back up at the end of the thing and go through it very clearly and flipping each page, but I'm going to pick this right back up and show you again. This is him flying through London and Mombasa, and then him arriving. Then he goes to Nairobi, over there to the Temple Annual. That must be something to do with checking in with the lodge. Met with the client, checked their mixers, and started going over their bread plant and the stuff that he was going to be working on, and literally is in town for 1 or 2 days, and he gets a call from the doctor that his wife goes into the hospital. And I think it's on this next page. It ended up being that she had brain cancer. And he has to wait in Africa for this long distance phone call for it to come through and tell him that his wife is sick. On these next couple of pages, you can see that he gets a call from the doctor and has to wait all day for it. Call from the doctor. Margaret went to the hospital. He gets this call, met with the person there in Africa, waited all day for the doctor to call, and the next thing he does is buy airplane tickets, buy airline tickets, and comes home. And you can see he has to go through London into Miami. Margaret went to the hospital. It's terrible. He finds out on the phone call that she's got brain cancer, and he waited all day to hear that phone call. He's all the way in Africa, and she's in Savannah, Georgia. And he's on the way back through the airline tickets and just started this job just a few days before, and now he's on the way back to Georgia. I'm going to play some music while I skip through the next couple of minutes, showing you these pages in his diary. I thought this next clip right here I'm getting ready to pop up was pretty cool, because when I looked up the Freemasons Hall in Mombasa, it said that this is where the Illuminati of Kenya were hanging out. You can see it in his email address right there at the bottom. He goes through several days where he has to listen to the doctors. Margaret slept, notes that she's in a coma right here. And then this next day, right here, August 9th, Margaret died at 8 p.m. His wife, he flew all the way back, and it took 8 months for her to die in a hospital. And he recorded all 8 of those months while she was there in the hospital. This is what my dad did right after he got back from the war and had established his life in making these bread plants and had committed to going to Africa to build this bread plant. And then he has to give it all up so that he can come back home. As soon as he gets home, calls the doctors, lets her sisters and lets her family go through her personal belongings, and then he's off on another part of an adventure down through Florida and the rest of his Freemason life.